people. I just want to go live. Okay.
Hello, Victor Emmanuel.
Yes, you can see, you can hear my son on the background. Okay, we are live. Just a second to make sure we go live also on Eventbrite. Oh no, YouTube. It's not gonna allow me. Okay, that's totally fine. Good, let's see, what's the time? Wow, right on time, right on sharp. So hello everyone watching us on Facebook and social media. Good morning and welcome to the launching of our 3-day summit on diplomacy and human rights education. We have an amazing lineup of topics and speakers that we will be discussing throughout the 3 days summit event, from religious freedom, which we start today, to human rights education for all, and to citizens diplomacy. Thank you to our distinguished guests for accepting the invitation of joining us today from basically 3 corners of the world, 3 continents. And of course, to all of you watching us live here, I would like, on behalf of the U.S. Institute of Diplomacy and Human Rights, to welcome you all. My name is Isabel Vadoyo. I am the founder of U.S. Institute of Diplomacy and Human Rights, and I will be the one moderating these 3 days sessions for the next 3 days. But to briefly introduce myself for those of you who do not know me so well, I'm an author, I'm an international human rights law specialist, and a business etiquette and diplomatic protocol expert. And for a living, I help people and organizations enhance their global understanding on diplomacy and human rights. Pre-COVID times, I was spending my days in between visiting the US Congress, talking with foreign government officials, diplomats, leaders of international organizations, and help them implement programs that are meant to educate their communities and raise public awareness on issues of human rights and diplomacy. In 2018, I had the tremendous honor to receive the President's Volunteer Service Award, which is a coveted award given out by the President of the United States of America for putting up more than 500 hours of volunteer work in the field of human rights during the span of 1 year. Back in 2015, also, I got the honor to be awarded the Merit Award for Economic Diplomacy from the International Union of Bilateral Chambers of Commerce and Industry. But I've been a human rights advocate for as long as I know myself, and our distinguished guests that know me from my outside life, outside the home, know that human rights is not only my passion, but also my background education. I pursued a career in this direction. I earned 2 master's degrees in human rights law. Currently, I'm doing my PhD. But I did that to be able to first educate myself in order to be able to help others, and as much as possible. So I dedicated my life to enhancing the understanding of as many people as possible of human rights, their role in democratic society, as well as teaching others the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. But as I mentioned, I wanted this to be brief, and today's session is about religious freedom, freedom of religion or belief. And we are also celebrating a very special day. As you know, today is International Day for Tolerance. The UN General Assembly back in 1996 proclaimed this day, November 16, as the International Day of Tolerance. Well, tolerance is meant to recognize the universal human rights and fundamental freedoms of others. But the whole purpose of this day, and I kind of like to research most of the time into what was in the mind of the drafters in the UN that actually decided to make a declaration of principles to proclaim this day as International Day of Peace. So their whole purpose was to raise public awareness on the dangers of intolerance. And you'll get to hear in today's session from our fantastic speakers what intolerance can bring about, especially when we are talking about religious intolerance. Discrimination on the basis of religion is unfortunately currently on the rise, and reports show even more than 23% increase in religion-based hate crimes. But why is religious freedom so important? For those who did not have a chance to work actually in this field and tackling more on issues of religious freedom and violences against religious minorities, when we are talking about religious freedom, we're not talking only about your right or your freedom to go worship in a place of your choice, okay, in a church. We are talking about this principle of religious freedom talks about being able to live as yourself and believe in whatever you want to believe publicly and peacefully. No matter, you don't have to be in a place of worship to do that. No matter where you are, you have to live peacefully and publicly. At the U.S. Institute of Diplomacy and Human Rights, we are actually dedicated to raise awareness on religious discrimination and to promote religious freedom for all. We developed an entire program called Teaching Tolerance, to which we offer workshops, seminars, we do different conferences for organizations across the world, and we consult them on improving their internal policies to be more religious inclusive. At the same time, at USIDHR, we are part of the International Religious Freedom Roundtable, where we participate in discussions with different religious leaders from all religions and none, and non-governmental organization, and the ambassador at large for religious freedom, Ambassador Sam Brambach from the US Department of State. And at the international level, there is an entire global network of such international religious freedom roundtables. As a matter of fact, the president of the U.S. Institute of Diplomacy and Human Rights, Mr. Manuel Wancha, he helped bring this wonderful project, the IREV Roundtable, to Romania back in 2019. And at USIDHR, we're currently working with many other countries in the Eastern European region and across the world that have expressed an interest in bringing this project to their countries and launching this IRF, International Religious Freedom Roundtable. But to understand the dimension and the importance of promoting religious freedom around the world, I cannot forget that today and tomorrow is taking place the third ministerial to advance freedom of religion or belief. A ministerial, well, why is it called like that? It's made of high-level government officials, ministers like Ministry of Foreign Affairs, as well as religious leaders, heads of different religious around the world, and leaders of nonprofit and non-governmental organizations that all come together in a conference to discuss issues on religious minorities and how to support them to achieve full understanding for all. The first two, so as I mentioned, is taking place the third ministerial. The first two ministerials took place in the United States. I had the tremendous honor to participate in last year's ministerial that was organized at the U.S. Department of State and was hosted by Secretary of State Michael Pompeo. And this year is organized by the government of Poland, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs from Poland. Following that, each year from now on, another country will actually host this important event. So I'm telling you all this because you might not be aware so far of the scale of and the efforts of promoting religious freedom for all. And that's why we are bringing you here today. And we purposely chose this topic to be the kickoff of our summit. But without further ado, I would like to go ahead and start and invite our first speaker. We have three speakers from three different continents. Okay, we have the US, we have Europe from the United Kingdom, and we have Charlene from Zimbabwe from the African continent. The first speaker of the day, Chaplain James Schaefer. Chaplain Schaefer served in an appointed position as a Franklin Fellow at the US Department of State. He's a retired colonel from the US Army, where he served more than 28 years and has had a decorated career in infantry and airborne, as well as in the Department of the Army Staff for the Pentagon. He continues to serve as a volunteer in the Office of the International Religious Freedom, actually, at the US State Department, and the Undersecretary for Civilian Security, Democracy, and Human Rights, where he daily shares his expertise on foreign religious policy, religious peace building, and mitigation action plans to face peace challenges. He also developed an amazing training course on religious freedom, peace, and strategic religious peace building. So without further ado, it is my pleasure and honor, and thank you so much for taking the time. I know there are so many things happening at the same moment in the world due to the fact that there is the ministerial, due to the fact that there is the International Day of Tolerance. So we really appreciate you taking your time sharing with our young audience here some tips about religious freedom and why is it important for us all. Chaplain Schaefer, you have the floor. Thank you.
Well, Isabel, thank you and welcome all. And I am especially honored to be part of this invitation from the U.S. Institute of Democracy and Human Rights. What an amazing organization. It really has grown. And I also want to thank our host because she's not only an author, she is an educator, but she is a personal example and a blessing to so many. And I thank God for you, as well as for all of those who are coming. So I'm James Schaefer, and I'd like to explain how religious freedom benefits conflict resolution, because conflict is what is often the case. And I give you my perspective as an Army chaplain, and I want to provide an illustration from my experiences in military conflict. So what's the problem? People often contend that religion is the problem. I would answer that as not only pessimism, but it's also exclusionism. On the contrary, I think that the problem is that religion is not seen as the solution. And I would say that religion, and Isabel and I agree on this, religion is the solution. Additionally, when anything is part of a problem, such as religion, because it has been on occasion, it has a moral and a logical responsibility to be part of the solution. Dr. Doug Johnston, in his book, Religion, Terror, and Error, said, where religion is part of the problem, it also must be part of the solution. So let me go over some ideas on the solution. Can religious freedom and its expression, again, the premise that Isabel and the Institute is proposing, can religious freedom and its expression be a solution in conflict resolution? My answer is yes. Now, religious freedom and its expression has been shown throughout centuries as a solution to complex conflict from local to national levels. Leaders have always understood this. It was interesting. John Adams, the second president of the United States, was writing to Thomas Jefferson in 1817, and he said, without religion, this world would be something not fit to mention in polite company. I mean, hell, unquote. I also appreciate what the Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright, who admits in her book that she was a skeptic about religion. However, in the book, The Mighty and the Almighty, she became a champion of religion and diplomacy and reminded us from history that, quote, we do not know what it would be like to live in a world where religion and religious faith is absent. We have, however, had clues from Lenin, Stalin, Mao Zedong, and the Nazis. Interesting. So how does religious freedom and its expression benefit conflict resolution? I see two principles. First, religious freedom solves conflict by allowing what is in each of us, that is faith, to apply solution to conflicts. Religious freedom allows the expression of a striving for good that is inside of us, and that is inside of us is called faith. But faith is not passive, it is active. Faith, and I would add that there's equivalency in those who may not have religious faith, and it may be their moral perspective or moral philosophy. Faith or moral philosophy is the expression that reveals that we have a moral compass within us that is willing to work for resolutions to conflict. Religious freedom allows us to strive for conflict resolutions because of faith. However, and if religious freedom is suppressed or oppressed, there is fear and reluctance to express faith, and conflicts are not solved. Now, the second principle is this: religious freedom solves conflicts by yearning for what is not inside of us. And I say that is hope. Hope comes from help to solve conflicts that we do not know how to solve. Sometimes there are so many problems, we don't know how to solve them. How do we figure those problems out? Religious freedom encourages a yearning for help that we cannot find in ourselves alone for these conflicts. This yearning drives us to have hope in God, or a religious construct, or a moral philosophy. And this person, I call him God, who cares for solutions for our conflicts. Religious freedom and its expression allows people to hope in God for help for conflicts. However, when religious freedom and its expression are suppressed or oppressed, people lose hope. And oftentimes things devolve into anarchy. So let me illustrate from my time as a chaplain when I was in Guantanamo, Cuba. I was assigned as an Army chaplain who spoke Spanish to help with the thousands of Cuban migrants who were fleeing from communist Cuba in the mid-1990s. Tens of thousands of Cubans fled in rafts. They were called balsas. Yet many children, wives, girlfriends, boyfriends, and elderly were killed by Castro's Marines or by sharks because of the seas. So when they were rescued by the U.S. Coast Guard, they were sent to Guantanamo, Cuba, which is a U.S. Navy base. They arrived devastated and depressed because they were being held there, but more because they had lost many friends, many, many family members, and there was a great deal of sadness. So I met with hundreds of Cubans on a sultry August evening, and I just had my guitar, and we stayed up all night, and we were playing sad ballads, songs of mourning for those who were lost. Yet, some out of the group who sang with me asked if we could start religious services the next day. They had never had any official support for religion in their country, and they said, can we do this here, in this place of the United States? So we did establish religious services for Catholics, Protestant, Jews, Muslims, and even animists. Services grew so much that we had over 1,000 meeting every week, and they experienced religious freedoms for the first time in their lives, and they revealed what each person had inside of them: faith and a longing for hope. So this continued for months until one day, and I was assigned there for a year, until one day they had a new opportunity to exercise their religious freedoms. So one day in October, their religious freedoms were tested when almost 50,000 of the migrants rioted because of the poor living conditions and the poor food, of which I had to eat it as well, and it was bad. Yet those who had benefited from religious freedoms in the camps decided not to riot, but they wanted to ask the U.S. general to listen to their grievances and try to persuade the other Cubans to cease rioting if the Americans would listen. So the commander agreed, and the religious Cubans and I met together with the American troops, and we prayed for peace in the middle of this dirt road, in the middle of riots. Then those Cubans who prayed spread out and persuaded their fellow Cubans to talk to the Americans, to explain their grievances. And the neat thing, the amazing thing that happened is that the riots stopped within 1 day and the grievances were addressed within just a few days after that. So I want to explain why religious freedom benefits conflict resolution. I learned from my experience in Cuba that the expression of religious freedom not only solved conflicts by Cubans expressing faith, but also because religious freedom promotes hope from God for solution to conflicts. These principles have worked for me as a chaplain in many other conflict zones, such as Afghanistan, Egypt, Kuwait, Jordan, in the Department of State, working with Isabel in Romania. However, and I need to say this as a warning, probably similar to what Secretary of State Albright said, if religious freedoms are suppressed or oppressed, not only are faith and hope suppressed, but like the canary in the coal mine analogy, suppression and oppression indicate that other freedoms may soon be lost. So I wanted to share that with you, and I now return to our amazing host, Isabel.
Thank you so much, Chaplain Schaefer. I think you beautifully explained for everyone to be so easy to understand from a grassroots level how important religious freedom for all is. Because let's face it, every religion is a minority someplace in this world, okay? Originally, I was born in Romania, where more than 80% of the country is Orthodox. When I moved to the United States, most of the people here are Catholics and all the other religions. So I kind of like get a sense of experimenting and talking with other people from different religions. And I've realized we're all the same. Talking about the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, I've been digging a lot for my entire life in teaching the principles in the declaration. Although they are not mandatory for the countries, we have the international protocols on civil and political rights and the economic and social rights. There's only one right that everyone can agree on, and that's the right of religious freedom, Article 18, okay? While all the other rights, because of the different politics of each country and the different, systems of their beliefs, they like, let's say an example, social security. Not all countries can agree on the right to social security, okay? However, the right to religious freedom and having all of us basically agree on this right is the first step to peace, is the first step to understanding all the other human rights. And I think what the U.S. Department of State, what you are doing, what the Ambassador Sam Brownback is doing currently with the International Religious Freedom Roundtable, what they are doing at the ministerial, it's also important because they get these country leaders, these different officials to agree that there's one right that we can all agree on, and that's religious freedom. And that's why we are bringing it to everyone today. So I forgot to mention for everyone, please, if you at any point during the speaker's presentation have any questions, and I saw a couple of them already coming through, make sure you comment below your questions, and my team is going to gather all this and convey them to me. I'll read them loud to our speaker. Just wanted to make sure, Chaplain Schaefer, that I know you have other responsibilities for the day. Can you continue to stay with us until the other presentation, or you?
I'm with you through the other presentations, yes.
Okay, thank you so much. We really appreciate, we are really appreciative of your time. So before then, I'll give the floor to our next speaker, and then at the end, I'm going to read some questions like a Q&A, and we'll just have a discussion on those. So our next speaker, Miss Olivia Flavel, she's a senior research associate at the U.S. Institute of Diplomacy and Human Rights. She holds a degree in sociology and she lives in the United Kingdom. Her research focuses on the analysis of the sociology of human rights violations, with an emphasis on teaching about religious intolerance, genocides, and the Holocaust. Within the US Institute of Diplomacy and Human Rights, she's actually in charge of our program, Teaching Tolerance. And a couple of months ago, Ms. Flavel was asked to present a report on the situation of Uyghurs, which is an ethnic minority from China. So today we invited her to speak about her findings in that report and educate us all about what is going on. Ms. Flavel, I'll give you the floor. Let me make you, because you also have a formal a PowerPoint presentation that you want to share with us, so that we all are on the same line. I know a lot of people are not aware what is going on, and we can wait for you to share with us, okay?
Thank you, Isabel. Thank you for such a warm welcome. Thank you for inviting me to speak. Chaplain Schaefer, what a wonderful talk, so engaging, really, really interesting to hear your thoughts. I guess I'm going to go into what can happen if we do suppress religious freedom. And tragically, this is an example of what is happening right now. It's still ongoing. So I will just share my screen with you guys so you can see what's going on. There we go. So the title says it all. I am going to be discussing the current genocide of Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang, northwest China. This topic, I personally found out about this topic a few months prior to this presentation today. And I have to say I was quite shocked at how little was known about what was occurring and how little I knew. I pride myself on my social media being very, very political, and I like to keep myself up to date with a lot of things that are happening in the world. I hadn't heard of anything going on in China, and the reasoning for that I will get into a little bit later. But first of all, I will kind of get into what we know is happening right now with some statistics, so you can kind of see the scale of what is happening. So there are currently an estimated over 3 million Muslims being held in, they've been dubbed re-education camps officially by the Chinese authorities. However, they are very, very similar to what you would consider a concentration camp. Within these camps, Uyghur Muslims are forced to denounce Islam and pledge their allegiance to the Chinese state. Horrible. Regarding the denouncing of Islam, it is common for communist governments to want allegiance to a state, especially the Chinese government. They are very, very powerful, and they wish for their citizens to not be divided by religion, and they want everyone to be pledge allegiance to their state. The detainees in these camps are exposed to torture, deprivation of food and medical care, and intense psychological pressure, and they really are being put through they're put in such dire circumstances. It's truly heartbreaking. And many are being abducted from Uyghur communities, and if they are prosecuted, they often do not get the luxury of a fair trial. They are just abducted and put in such camps. This is a picture that surfaced not long ago. All of these sources, all of these images can be found on the internet. I'll kind of let this linger because there's not really many words I can say to express how shocking it must be to see an image of this nature. But that is direct. So there are a couple of parties which provide reasonings as to why this might be happening. The two main are the Chinese authorities, which have their justifications, I will use as lack of a better word, and the Uyghur Human Rights Project, which I will go into a little bit later, but they have some interesting ideas of why they think this is occurring. Regarding the Chinese authorities, they claim that Uyghurs possess extremist views and therefore pose a threat to security, despite possessing no credible evidence that there was ever extremism present within these communities. There are comments that the authorities are trying to tackle separatism, extremism, and terrorism, which the Chinese government have stated are the three main terrors that they need to fight in order to create a unified country. Since this information leaked, the Chinese authorities have even gone as far to release a statement claiming that the happiest Muslims in the world live in Xinjiang. This is a result of a lot of building pressure, which has happened quite recently. And that kind of statement it's really shocking when you can see the evidence before your eyes, but they are still so certain to push such a narrative. It's quite shocking. But to move on, the Uyghur Human Rights Project. Anyone who hasn't heard of them and is looking for some more information on this topic, I really would recommend giving their website a read. They published a report really recently, and the whole thing is really informative, really, really brilliant, and they have the most up-to-date information of what is going on. So I really recommend checking out this website, anyone who's interested in this topic. But the evidence that they've collected suggests that Uyghurs are being abducted for two main reasons, and that is organ harvesting and slave labour. Organ harvesting, for those who aren't familiar, is the execution of someone purposely for organs to give to someone else. They can be sold for lots of money, or they can be taken and put in for transplants. Yeah, it's pretty gruesome stuff. But a report from the BMC Medical Ethics Journal revealed more than 90,000 Muslims are being executed currently in China each year for the purpose of organ harvesting. That isn't just Uyghurs, that is more Muslims as well, more minority Muslims that are from China. I couldn't find a specific statistic for Uyghurs, as there is still a lot of information we are yet to learn about what is going on. But that gives you a kind of idea of the scale of what we know so far. Regarding slave labour, the Australian Strategic Policy Institute identified at least 80,000 Uyghurs who were transferred out of camps in Xinjiang and assigned to a multitude of factories within China. So a lot of this evidence is really shocking and not something that you would imagine would be resurfacing or occurring in 2020, but unfortunately it is. And as tragic as it is, we need to find a way to kind of move forward and make sure that we are putting pressure on governments to respond. And that is where I'll lead us into the final part of the presentation. What can we do to help? And all I can really suggest is, if you see something on social media related to this, like it, share it, read it, and educate yourself on what is going on. The Chinese media is notoriously capped, I suppose. They don't have the same social media platforms that we use, and they are very, very careful about what information they allow out of the country and what kind of information they allow in. And really, the only thing that we can do is ensure to put pressure on our own governments and start from the bottom and work our way up to make sure that these sorts of injustices are widespread and that people do know that it's happening, so that the people at the top can help and can stop atrocities like this from ongoing or from happening again. So yeah, that is all I have. But please, if you weren't familiar with this topic prior and you're interested, the Uyghur Human Rights Project has some excellent resources. There are many videos on YouTube. There are also countless petitions online that are trying to put pressure on different governments from around the world to act. So there is a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of information out there. And, share this summit. There is going to be a recording, and if you share and let people know what's happening, and maybe we can make a difference. So yeah, thank you very much. I'm gonna make Isabel the host because that's a lot of pressure for me.
Thank you so much, Olivia. What a wonderful presentation. And although it's painful, it is very, very important for all of us to be aware of what is happening in the world. As I mentioned, the whole purpose of International Day of Tolerance is not necessarily to learn how to become more tolerant, but is to be aware of the dangers of intolerance. And sorry, the Uyghurs community and what they are facing nowadays is really a painful example. I remember a couple of years back when this the whole news went out to the world that this is what's happening with the Uyghur Muslim community. Everybody was shocked, especially here in the United States, where, believe it or not, we do have more freedom of religion. Everyone is allowed to, have their own religion, their own belief system through the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution. However, when we heard the outbreak of this was it was unbelievable. And there was a lot of, and I like that you mentioned the Uyghur Human Rights Project, because they did a tremendous work in the background to actually help bring this issue forward. And I remember I actually met with families of victims of the Chinese government who are in re-education camp. And I know nowadays we have like even YouTubers from the United Kingdom who went online and kind of like spread the idea what is going on there. But there are so many intricacies to this, and it's so hard to get out information. For all of you watching us here, imagine in China you don't have Facebook, so actually they can't watch us live right now, so it's so hard to get information out of there. The only people who are actually going to bring us information outside to the world to spread about this issue, this pressing issue, are the people who have been through this and actually were granted political asylum into another country. So in the beginning, they were just words of few people going through this. And then now it's actually a huge problem that we need to get a word out. So more people, the more people the more people you post, as Olivia mentioned, post this conference, this summit on your social media. Let your friends, your family, your community know about what's happening in the Uyghur. Thank you so much, Olivia, for the presentation. You did a wonderful job. I can't wait. I saw during your presentation, I saw some of the comments. Again, I encourage everyone to comment below, ask your questions, specifically tell us, did you know about what's going on with the Uyghurs? I'm very excited to bring you this issue here in the summit. So going further to our last speaker from the kickoff event, she is a women's and girls advocate from Zimbabwe, Charlene Chikenya. She's the founder of Stand Foundation, an organization that addresses inequalities and discriminations faced by young women and girls in Zimbabwe. Ms. Chikenya, she's a former Mandela Washington Fellow and the Youth Ambassador for Zimbabwe at the International Human Rights Summit held by Youth for Human Rights International at the UN every year. She works in collaboration with the government of Zimbabwe, as well as with the civil society and different UN agencies, the US Embassy in Zimbabwe, and conducts many human rights trainings and awareness campaigns on different issues, on human rights issues in Zimbabwe. One of the issues she's been working for the past year on is child marriages. So I'll let her tell you more about that, what's going on right now in Zimbabwe, and talking again in the terms of what religious intolerance can bring to you. And no matter who you are in this world, no matter where you are in this world, if you don't have religious freedom, it's going to be very hard for you and for everyone around you to live in peace, live peacefully. And that's the call of a society, to live in peace, in abundance, in prosperity, so that everyone can love themselves. Everyone can love each other, as the Bible said. You know, we have to love our neighbors. We have to love each one, no matter where they are from, where they are coming, whatever their ethnicity is, whatever their religion is, whatever their sex, their gender, their race is. That's the whole purpose of peace. And I'm so bummed of at the potential of seeing this happening. And I know there is a lot of turbulence, like political turbulence right now in the world, a lot of like violence happening, but it is for people like Olivia, like Chaplain Schaefer, like Charlene, that are bringing a difference. And difference can be made small. You know, you can feel that it might be a drop in the ocean, but it's not. I'm the life example of that. You know, when I first came to the United States, I didn't have any friends. I didn't have family besides my husband, but I was able to make a difference just by being me, just by promoting from person to person what are human rights and why they are important. Okay, so without further ado, I would like to welcome and introduce our speaker, Charlene Chikenya. You have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Isabel. Thank you so much for the platform. I just want to acknowledge the insightful presentations from the speakers before me. And I would also like to acknowledge the respectable participants and organizers of this summit. As we celebrate the International Day of Tolerance, in my presentation, I will share an analysis on religious freedom in Zimbabwe, and with particular focus on child marriages and the role of tradition and religion, and with a few case studies I have been working on directly and indirectly. Just for a background on the statistics on religion in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe's population, it constitutes of an approximation of about 14.5 million people. And from the 14.5 people, according to the 2015 nationwide demographic conducted by the government, we have 86% of the population, which is Christian. 11% have no religious affiliation. Less than 2% adhere to traditional beliefs, and less than 1% are Muslim. And from the total population, 37% are from the apostolic sector, 21% Pentecostal, and 16% that's other, which are Protestants, 7% Roman Catholic, and 5% Christian from. So the majority of Christians in Zimbabwe are involved in dual worship, and especially more openly are the Catholic, who participate in both Christian and traditional practices. Most of the Muslim population lives in rural communities and high density areas, with a few in other suburban neighborhoods. There are also small numbers of Greek Orthodox, Jews, Hindus, Buddhists. But to note is that our population is mainly predominantly Christian. From analysis by various researchers and my personal experience in Zimbabwe on religious freedom, I could sum that Zimbabwe is considered generally free. However, with some concerns in its latent phases, though, that tend to compromise religious tolerance, freedom, and also religious practices that in their quest to exercising their religious freedom tend to infringe fundamental freedoms of their congregants, including gender issues. And this I will explain as we go. So Zimbabwe is a signatory to international, regional, and frameworks like the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. It's a signatory of the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And our policy frameworks in Zimbabwe and that is our constitution, it prohibits religious discrimination and provides for freedom of religion, including the freedom to practice, propagate, and give expression to one's religion in public or in private. Of all fundamental liberties protected in the Constitution, freedom of religion remains one of the most litigated for reasons of separating religion and politics. For now, I will share a situational analysis of pertinent issues arising in relation to religious freedom in Zimbabwe. And these range from political issues, gender issues, which are mostly vested on, especially on issues of child marriage, bias, and the freedom to public practice of religion. So I'm just going to touch briefly on some of these issues so you can just get a brief background of the kind of issues that we're dealing with in terms of religious freedom. So on political issues that are rising in the issue of religious freedom, although we have alleged interference of government in the affairs of religious leaders. However, according to the Constitution, generally the state is not meant to interfere with the practice of religion and culture or church administration unless the church is being used as a political tool to influence public political opinion by propagating political ideologies regarded as anti-government. However, as a priest practitioner, we always try to ensure that we always get to a middle ground of all conflicting issues on the subject matter. So we've had claims of charismatic leaders who have fallen short from the authorities after having uttered distasteful, political inclined statements towards, say, the government under the church banner in public. And on this note, this would be quite, I would like to throw a thought-provoking question to the audience. To what extent really should religious organizations exercise their religious freedom as far as political involvement is concerned, and where do we draw the line so that we remain relevant as religious leaders, since we are also a very good tool of peace in the community? Well, arguments on the subject matter includes that since maybe there is a constitution that rightfully prohibits religious institutions from engaging in activities that influence the public political opinion, maybe religious leaders ought to adhere as per agreement, or else the religious leaders separates themselves from the religious setup and conduct his or herself political activities separate and as an independent activist, as the law would not be able to protect them under the Section 19 of the Constitution that protects public religious practices. However, some civil society organizations believe that it is the Constitution itself that maybe should be altered, as it limits the freedom to religious freedoms, and there has to be some understanding between the two parties or possible amendments. Arguments also arise that in the prevailing economic crisis, the religious sector has been playing a major role in public service delivery through humanitarian work across Zimbabwe, and should be able to participate in developmental government processes, including airing out their religious opinions concerning politics in the most practical way that brings peace into the society. Given the fact that the Zimbabwe is predominantly Christian, there are on the issue of biases, this is another issue on religious freedom, on biases. So given the fact that the Zimbabwe is predominantly Christian, there are concerns of religious bias, as most of the only religious holidays in the calendar are based towards Christians, like Easter, Friday, Sunday, Monday, and Christmas holidays. And Sunday is also officially an off day from work and school. So this means that other religious holidays like the pilgrimage and Diwali, for instance, are not public. Hence, students can miss out in school if it falls during the week. And unless they are at, say, a Muslim school that is predominantly Muslim. So we've had also issues emanating like the right to public religious practices. So on this note, we have had cases of, say, Rastafarian taking the school to court after the son had been requested to cut off their lock as per the school conduct. And this argument was that it would defile the son if he cut off the hair, as it was a practice within their Rastafarian religion. Although with a lot of struggle, the courts eventually ruled in their favor, guided by the Section 19 of the Constitution that protects individuals on their rights to practice religion in the public. This was the same process taken by another Muslim father whose son had been requested to cut off their beard at school. A more extensive examination on gendered implications of harmful religious and traditional practices in Zimbabwe and the role of religion and tradition is one of the issues that I'm going to share with you at this moment, which is one that I am well vested in, that I've been working on since 2017. So I'm going to share a few case studies. However, ironically, in our work through STAND Foundation, which is the Women and Girls organization that I founded, so what's ironic is the promotion and advocacy for religious freedoms here in Zimbabwe, and yet the abuse of those same freedoms through harmful religious practices, and especially on women and girls. So you find out that we have harmful traditional and religious practices that infringe the rights of women and girls and young children. And some of these practices are ritual or, say, honor killings in the name of religion. So in Zimbabwe, at least 1 in 3 girls is sexually abused before their 18th birthday, a phenomenon that is also more common in more minor rapes, like that of a 7-month-old baby that was sexually abused by a 20-year-old man in the name of religious or traditional rituals. So which means that in as much as we try to promote religious freedom, we also have cases where the same religions are infringing the basic human rights of women, of children, and that becomes an issue of concern. So as of October 17, 2020, the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission has expressed concern over the rise in ritual killings in the country following gruesome murder of a 7-year-old boy from rural Murewa about a month ago, and other related murders and abductions currently under investigation. So these are more disturbing issues that are rising in the name of religious practices, which tend to be quite harmful, where the boy was dragged and cut alive into pieces. And until now, one of the limbs has not yet been found. So all these are done in the name of religious and traditional practices. And these rituals, which in turn violate the basic human right to life enshrined in Section 48 of the Constitution and other sections of international treaties on rights to life, such as the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Therefore, in as much as we endeavor to promote the freedom of religion and tolerance this day, it is equally critical to investigate possible harmful practices within religious belief systems. I remember in my quest to enhance female education here in Zimbabwe, as I was starting my programming a few years ago, I remember one day receiving a call from a certain teacher in rural Masvingo, which is a marginalized and rural community in Zimbabwe. The teacher called and asked if I could assist their 12-year-old 7th grade bright female student who had come to seek refuge at their school as she was about to get married off to an elderly man about 5 times the age who was part of their religious congregants. She also mentioned to her teacher that the same was done to her sister as soon as she reached puberty. It is a trend in some of these religious practices, and this girl is one of the thousands in Zimbabwe who, just as she starts puberty, is rendered ready for marriage, whose life is ruined before it even starts, all in the name of religion and traditional practices. Well, at that time, there was little that I could do for her, but the thought keeps lingering in my mind. What if she was given a chance to learn? What if her life could have been brighter? So through STAND, we have ever since increased our little capacity and dedication to help girls stay in school and end child marriage in Zimbabwe. In a bid to end gender-based violence, we have also initiated country soccer tournaments, which brings men together through soccer, discussing and spearheading community social contracts with religious leaders to end various forms of gender-based violence in rural and marginalized communities, especially those that impede girls' education, like early forced child marriage. So I'm going to share with you a case, the last case of Rushinga. Rushinga is, so according to reports as recent as this November 2020, Rushinga is one of the districts in Mashonaland Central Province of Zimbabwe, which is also a marginalized rural community. It has reported high rates of child marriages, teen pregnancies, and school dropouts, with young people being sexually active as early as 12 years of age. According to National AIDS Council here in Zimbabwe, in 2018, 551 learners dropped out of school, 62% being girls and 20% due to marriage. So most of the problems surrounding early and child marriage in Rushinga from our findings are fueled by traditional and religious beliefs. When engaged, some traditional leaders tend to denounce the practice in public. Some of them preside over these issues at their courts, but do not condone the practice. As of November 2020, SAFAIDS, a local NGO, has been working extensively in the Rushinga district by establishment of community commitment charters. These are documents that outline the challenges faced by girls in completing education, child marriage, incidences, and brings together community traditional leaders and religious leaders to come together and sign a commitment of accountability to such issues. This means that they are answerable to the community, and the community itself is answerable to instances of child marriage and other harmful traditional practices. In addition to this, they pay fees for girls' education, have set up GBV rooms for reporting, and also community action plans for adherence of the community commitment charters Stand Foundation has been operating along the same lines in the Goromonzi rural community, and we are committed to continually partner and stand for girls' rights to an education, economic and social emancipation. We will continue to stand for her African dreams, and we will build more partnerships to ensure that we protect girls' rights in Zimbabwe. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kenya. I think you wonderfully touch on a very important subject, which is religious freedom. It also sometimes, for some religious leaders, they themselves are doing violations of human rights. And I think the example of child marriages is one that it's going on in Zimbabwe and in other places in the world as well. And there are other religious practices from other religions that are, infringing of other people's lives. Well, what I learned in my career working in the human rights field for more than a decade now, I learned that human rights are not only, they don't teach you just that you have rights. What human rights teaches you is that you have rights and that other people have rights too. And your rights ends where the rights of other people begin. So of course, we are talking about religious freedom. We are talking that we do have a right to believe in whatever we want to believe in. However, make sure those religious practices don't infringe on the other rights in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So you bring up a very important point. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you everyone for being here. We are a bit ahead of the schedule, but I really, because we have so many wonderful questions. The live page, the live feed is full of support from all different countries, from Afghanistan, from Pakistan, from Romania, from all over the world. People are joining us to watch us live. So thank you everyone for watching us. And of course, I have a couple of questions that my team selected to read to you, and so that we form a discussion on this. We'll just do this for about 10 minutes, and then we'll have to end the session. I know religious freedom is such an important issue, and it's so fantastic to talk about it, and we would need like more than one day actually to talk about this. So the first question I have, it's somebody from Romania asking about compulsory blood donation. So apparently in certain countries this measure wants to be implemented, like forcing everybody to do blood donation monthly. And the question specifically asks, knowing that there are religions where donating blood is forbidden, how does this measure affect some people's religious freedom? That's one of the questions. I don't know which one of you have heard about these issues, have worked on this specifically, but I think it's an important subject to talk about. And not necessarily blood donation. There are other measures that the government can implement that can affect other people's religion. So what can we do about that? What can people do about that?
Well, I think I'll take
Sure.
the. I think you summed it up well when you said that someone's human rights, your personal human rights, end where someone else's begins. And I guess if you take that premise and adopt it to them trying to essentially forcibly make, I guess, is for lack of a better term, make people donate blood, as if it is against your religion, that does essentially go against your human rights, and it does infringe on your ability to practice your religion fully. Be the same, as you said, it applies to lots of different things, and I don't think that a government should have the power to be able to infringe someone's rights to practice religion in the way that they want to. And if it is something that is in their scripture that they are not able to do or not allowed to do or do not wish to do, then they shouldn't have to do it.
Yes, no, I totally agree with that statement. And in my own viewpoint, I think the more, again, remember governments, like measures that are taken by the governments are put there in that position because of us. We, the people, are supposed to tell the government what they should do and what they should not do. Now, think about all the different, marches for peace, marching for civil rights, rallies. That's where those are instances where people come together and express their human rights. Have you ever heard about that? Stand up for human rights. But if you don't know what you are standing up for, if you are not aware about these religious freedom issues that we talked about today, how can you stand up for your right? So kind of like it's the same. The more you educate the public, the society, the community, from your neighbors to your friends and family, to your school, to your place of work, place of worship, the more people know and are aware of that issue, the more people will demand your rights, because that's our responsibility as citizens of different countries, as citizens of the world, to demand our rights. The government doesn't necessarily know always what to do. They are just people put there in that position. They have to listen to us. So the more people bring about certain issues like this one, will be able to convince them this is like the route, the avenue that you should take on. Thank you, Miss Flavelle. And actually, I do have another question for you, because it's on the Uyghur community, now that you talk about that. So the next question is, given that there is a sufficient evidence based on the outright violation of human rights for the Uyghur Muslims in China, what are the chances that the UN might intervene to prevent the Chinese government from continuing this practice by way of resolution?
Well, I think many countries have actually already made a stand. However, this was in 2019 and it was prior to Corona. And I believe that 23 countries made a stand against the violence that is occurring right now. However, they were rebutted by 50 countries which provided support for China's endeavours at the time. That is as much as I know. I do know from recent research that the UK has made another stand, and I believe they were backed by some other countries. I wouldn't want to name them because I'm not 1,000% sure which they are. But essentially, the bottom line is the UN are aware of what is happening, and so are many other human rights organisations. 23 countries petitioned and said, this is a gross violation of human rights and we need to look into it. And then 50 countries showed support for China, and because of the overwhelming support for the Chinese government, it was concluded that nothing was going to take place as of yet. And I guess all I can really say is keep your eyes out and keep updated of what's going on. Things change all the time, and there is a lot more knowledge about this topic and a lot more countries that are aware of what's going on. And I think if you just kind of keep your ears open, then maybe hopefully there'll be more support for ending the violence.
So I would add also to Olivia's comment, the United States Department of State, specifically Secretary Pompeo, has probably published in this era more comments about more sanctions and comments about this very topic, which Olivia, as well, has come up in the Earth Roundtable. So I sense that not only do governments such as our own take a very serious and financial and political stand against this oppression and actual persecution of religious and human rights, but we also find that NGOs, organizations, are very serious about standing against this. And so this rises as a cacophony of concern. This is not going to go away. We're going to continue to deal with this. So I encourage and I'm grateful for the other countries as well as NGOs doing that.
Thank you all. I think you pointed out, I don't have anything to add. I don't know if Charlene, if you have anything to add on specifically this issue, but I have a couple more questions that I really want to point out to all of you before we end up the session for today. So Chaplain Schaefer, now that we kind of like jump the ball towards you, because you have been working also in conflict zones, and you as a chaplain, and you have a role to also make peace between all the other chaplains, you know, and religious leaders within a specific area and in the army. And I think it's very important to touch on that subject. But one question that relates to that is, what are your thoughts regarding the discriminating reactions of some other people when faced with other beliefs than theirs? And to kind of like give an example for the audience here, I know, like, for example, in the Orthodox religion, we have so many rituals that when are seen by other people in the world, they are like, what are you guys doing, you know? So can you explain a bit more, what can you do as, you know, a chaplain to actually make sure everyone's religion is respected?
So 2 points. Within the Army itself, within the United States government, it's important that we practice what we use as a term is called accommodations. So the regulations, as well as the United States government guidance, is that there are accommodations for practicing of different religions. So leaders within the government make opportunity and or provisions for different faith practices. And as a chaplain, we were the primary advisor to the commander, to the chief of staff of the Army, concerning how to practice those things, as long as they did not infringe on someone else's right or infringe on the military mission. So that's in the military context. But when we went to foreign areas, and there were debates and even arguments and fights, war over the expression of one religious perspective over another. If those parties if they invited us, we would be involved specifically in negotiations between those parties, those religious parties, in order that each be accommodated. And they welcomed us. As a matter of fact, in Afghanistan, the Islamic mullahs were the ones who specifically invited me and other chaplains to be involved in these negotiations for the purpose of meeting the rights of women, caring for children, caring for orphans, and caring for those other religious minorities within Afghanistan that generally were considered less honorable. And we brought principles that said that in the name of God and in the name of Allah, if we respect what God says concerning us, then his respect. That frequently became a launching point for further discussions and conversations that led to peace intervention, led to understanding, and generally were successful.
Thank you so much, Chaplain Schaefer. I think you have the best experience to share on like tough situations where you have to take instant decisions, or when anything you can say can be seen as a diplomatic break of protocol, if you want to call it like that. So even looking at issues such simple as you know, religious practices, when you are representing a country, it's so important to respect the religious freedoms of other people. And that's kind of like another hat that we have as citizens of the world, citizens, to actually represent our country well. And here we are not to talk only about problems. US IDHR, we are focused here on finding solutions, providing the solutions. And we heard from some of our speakers here, what are the solutions? So it's not only what makes us different. You know, there are so many human rights organizations out there that are talking about, there are violations of human rights, they've been violations, we do extensive reports. I don't want to give names. However, how are we making a difference if we are not also providing the solutions? And in our viewpoint, and the main mission of USIDHR is education, education of other people about these issues, about the importance of these issues, and making sure we bring to you all the time like fresh topics that we can talk about it. So my last question is for that I selected here is for Charlene. In regards to your presentation, it was like so impressive because people are not aware of what is going on, and now they started to make similarities of what is going on in other places in the world. So the question is, do religious beliefs affect gender equality? And I know you talked about how child marriages is and especially affect women and girls, but also you gave examples how they affect boys. And at the same time, you're wonderful running that soccer team, which is kind of like, for kids, sometimes it's very hard to explain painful issues such as violations of human rights. I work with a lot of kids on human trafficking, and it's so hard to explain to them the dangers of human trafficking. And Charlene does a wonderful job as a women's and girls advocate to do that. So tell us a bit more, what do you think the religious beliefs affect gender equality, or what is the relationship between the two?
Okay, thank you very much. Do religious practices affect gender equality? Well, generally, they're not supposed to affect gender equality. And in instances where they affect gender inequality, it means that they are harmful practices or harmful beliefs. So we would need to examine our beliefs and ensure that as we practice our beliefs, they do not infringe others' human rights.
Yes, exactly. And when you speak about that, I think also about like the other issues like female mutilation, genital mutilation, FGM, and you have also the child marriages, you have the abortion problem that is going on in the US right now. So there are so many examples where religious beliefs of other people can kind of like infringe on a specific part of the society, gender equality, but that doesn't mean that you cannot affect boys and girls in the same way, and doesn't mean that we cannot do something about that. And I think what you all are doing through the daily jobs you are doing in the day activities, it's very important. And I want to acknowledge all that you all doing and express to everyone who is currently watching us what wonderful activities, and apparently like simple people like you can make such a big difference in everyone's lives, in starting small from your own community to your own country. So thank you so much, everyone. We do have a couple of more questions. I will try myself personally to answer some of them. Unfortunately, we're running out of time here. We already passed the schedule, and we want to be appreciative of the times and efforts of all our speakers today. And we are really grateful for everyone watching us today here, for your comments, for your engagement. We will be starting our session number 2, day 2 of the Summit on Diplomacy and Human Rights Education tomorrow at the same time, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, the new US and Canada, New York time. So please join us tomorrow. Tomorrow topics is about, we are going to dig more into the human rights issue, and especially human rights education for all. We do have speakers again from three different parts of the world, from Australia, from Pakistan, and from the United States. So please join us tomorrow. Again, a warm thank you to all of you from the bottom of my heart, from me personally and from the entire team that worked so hard at U.S. Institute of Diplomacy and Human Rights and bringing this summit to all of you. Olivia, you've been part of that. Besides being, a speaker and our research associate, it's actually very, very, you worked so hard to put this together, and I'm so appreciative of your work and everyone in my team. And tomorrow you'll get to meet some of our team members that helped put together this summit. So thank you all so much for participating.
Thank you for your tremendous leadership. God bless you.
Thank you. God bless you all. May everyone live in peace and know that you can make a difference. I'm telling you from the bottom of my heart, everyone in their life can make a difference. And that's why we are here. If you guys need to reach us, you know, we are always here at the U.S. Institute of Diplomacy and Human Rights. Thank you all for your time today. Enjoy a beautiful day and evening wherever you are calling us from. And I will talk to you soon. See you guys tomorrow on our live stream here on Facebook. Have a good one, everyone. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Bless you.
Isabel.
Bye-bye.